On December 17th, 1944, I was stationed in Italy, 15th Air Force. You can see my patch there, 15th Air Force. The big Air Force at the time was the 8th Air Force, which was our partner, and unfortunately they were much better known. General Doolittle had a lot of good publicity going for them, and the 15th Air Force wasn't that well recognized, I thought. But in any event, I was there in a B-24 bomber. I wanted to be a pilot, really. I was going to be a Top Gun, if you guys have seen that. I mean, this idea of driving in a bus like a bomber, that didn't interest me at all at 18. And however, the Army had other choices or concerns, so they said, no, you're the right size, you're going to be a gunner. And so at 150 pounds at that time, I fit into my turret very nicely. I've gained a little weight, I'm 155 now. So, you'll excuse the weight comes on pretty fast. However, if any of you want a good diet, I'm getting ahead of myself in my prison camp experience. The Germans had a way to reduce your weight, and that was they just didn't feed you. So in 5 months, I lost 40 pounds down to 110. So that wasn't a good feeling and pretty miserable. Anyway, to get back, I'm taking off in my bomber on my mission, and we're going to bomb an oil refinery in Germany, synthetic oil refinery. It just so happened after I went to college, got a job in the engineering business. I have 2 college degrees in engineering. I have a professional engineering license, and I've traveled around the world to 67 different countries. And I've lived in Paris for 5 years. That was a tough overseas assignment, but I had to put up with it. And I lived another year or so in London. Anyway, get back to the plane, we're taking off, and we didn't know what to expect. We were told this was going to be a milk run. And a milk run at that time was no real enemy opposition. Well, we got up in the air and discovered that things were different than so many times things work out differently than someone decides ahead of time. Anyway, we were flying towards Vienna at the time. This was a long flight for a B-24 bomber, and we didn't have that much ability to long-range bombing. We had our masks on our faces, oxygen masks. Temperature inside the bomber was 50 degrees below zero, so you had to be have your heated suit plugged in. And then the next thing you know, the flak came up from down below, the flak being anti-aircraft fire. And it put up a screen of black smoke, and while you couldn't hear the shrapnel necessary, you could hear it bouncing off the airplane. And that was coming right up at us. Unfortunately, we were flying in tail-end trolley position. You know what the tail-end trolley is? That's the last guy in the line. And by the time we got there, the Germans knew exactly where we were. They had other fighter planes up, and so they were zeroing in on us, and bam, immediately a shell blew a hole in the wing, and I looked over, turned to the side, and saw that hole with gasoline rushing out, because that's where we had our gasoline storage, 100 octane, and all of a sudden, number 4 engine, we had 4 engines on a B-24. Number 4 engine went out, stopped, propeller stopped. Then the next thing you know, number 3 engine went out. And now we're flying on 2 engines, plane trying to fly around to the right because it only had 2 engines. And I said, uh-oh. I'm not going back home in this plane. It's too far, and I'm afraid something else is going to happen. You know, I wasn't that scared. People have asked me over and over, were you really scared? And maybe I was so dedicated to my job. I knew what I had to do and I wanted to do it. Maybe I was just dumb. But I didn't get that panic. Now, some of the crew members on board, I had 9 other crew members. They went ballistic, some of them, screaming over the intercom, etc. But I was hanging in there. I'm bragging now if you haven't noticed. And the next thing you know, the pilot says, okay, we're in bad shape. We got to give up. Now, how does an airplane give up to all these German fighter planes? Because they were coming in right on my nose turret. And I could see the wings lighting up right in front of me. And I could feel it hitting the airplane. And she was going to go down, and I knew that. And I'm firing back with my .250 caliber machine gun. Big slugs come out of that. You can shoot about 800 rounds a minute with one .50 caliber machine gun. However, you'll burn out the barrel if you stay too long on it. Then both of my guns locked up on me, stopped. But that was a sad feeling. Then you had no way out, except reach down and I removed my glove, which was a mistake in that temperature, and as a result froze my thumb, and it's still not in good shape. But anyway, I managed to get the guns going again, and they said, well, we got to stop, we're going to give up. So we lowered the landing gear, the idea. That was the way to tell the code of the Air Force. You lower the landing gear, and the German fighter pilots would come around, they'd see the landing gear down, they'd say, okay, these guys are giving up, escort them to a field nearby, and then we were going to be home free then, we're going to land. However, they just didn't stop firing. So I took back doing my job and did that. So finally the pilot said, okay, we're going down, we got to bail out. Did I ever have any practice with a parachute? What do you think? No. You know why? The Air Force didn't give you a chance to practice jumping out in an airplane with a parachute? It's too dangerous. You're kidding yourself. It's bad enough getting shot, but I have on my top of my hat here, you can't see it from distance, you are there, but it's a caterpillar. It's not like the cicadas that are going to be attacking us soon after 17 years, but this is a caterpillar, because I'm a member of the Caterpillar Club. And because some of you may know that the Caterpillar Club is an association which is awarded only to individuals who have saved their lives jumping out in a parachute. You don't get it for skydiving or just fooling around or coming down in Yankee Stadium or anything else. They really mean business. So if you want to take a look at that, I have a nice certificate also. All right, so now we're going to bail out. And we didn't practice it. And now my navigator was supposed to pull me out of my turret because it was a tight fit, even though I was a skinny guy. And he didn't show up. And so I finally got out, scrambled out myself, and looking for my parachute. He was supposed to stand there and snap it onto my harness. I had a harness with hooks on it. And he was supposed to snap it on and then push me out of the nose wheel door, which is a trap door in the front of the plane, right near my turret, a hole in the bottom of the plane, if you will. And that was the routine. When I looked for my navigator with my parachute, I couldn't find him. And then I looked over and he had already jumped. He didn't wait. My buddy, yeah. And now where was my parachute? Holy mackerel, it's right next to that opening in the bottom of the plane. And the plane's going like this in all different directions. And if that parachute goes out, falls out of the opening, I'm finished. But I recovered the fumble, snapped it on, jumped out, and I was gone. And you're supposed to count to 10 when you, that's what they told us. Well, I got a little antsy, a little, I don't know why, but I said, yeah, I better make sure this thing opens. I hope the guy packed it properly, whoever he was. And so I pulled it a little too soon, and we were at a lot of the forward velocity of the airplane, and that snapped open with a terrific snap. In fact, the Veterans Administration now gives me part of a disability as a result of an injury I got from opening that parachute. But anyway, I'm coming down now in the parachute. And I'm already over my time, Charlie, right? He's gonna get the hook out in a minute. I'll finish it up fast, Charlie, I promise. Where I'm coming down in the parachute, and now silence, absolute silence. Before the machine gun, brrr, the engine, brrr. Now nothing at all, just silence coming down. Where am I going? The kids in school asked me, were you scared to jump out of the plane? Answer to that is no. I was scared not to jump out. Because if you didn't jump out of a B-24 bomber when it was going bad, you would never get out. If it ever went into a spin, the centrifugal force would pull you against the walls. You'd never get out. So I knew I had to get out of there fast and trust, and I did. And down I came. And the old time, some of you were old enough to remember Errol Flynn and John Wayne and all those heroes who fought the whole German army. I thought that was marvelous in Hollywood, but it doesn't work out in real life. So I came down. I tried to adjust my parachute to get near a wooded area. Unfortunately, that collapsed the parachute completely. And down I started to come, boom. And so I'm going to leave this. Fortunately, it reopened, or I wouldn't be here annoying you guys. And it opened again, and down I came. And I was actually in Austria at the time, and pretty soon I gave up. Then it was off to interrogation. The Germans were not very nice people when it came to prisoners. I was a POW, and interrogation was difficult. If you've ever been in solitary confinement, you'll never want to go back there again. And I kept telling them, name, rank, and serial number, that's all you'll get out of me. And he said, well, you can just stay here then. And of course, they hadn't fed me anything since I came down. It was freezing inside the prison I was in, and then they'd alternately come in with lights and say, are you going to tell us what we want to know? And I said, no. So I held to that. And then it was another prison camp, and I got to cut this really short. They wanted hostages back when the Allies crossed the Rhine River, and they pushed about 60 of us, Air Force prisoners, into these boxcars that you've seen. They're 40 and 8s, they call them, French boxcars for 40 men and 8 horses, which is where they got the 40 and 8 acronym from. And we were jammed in half a boxcar, so tight that you couldn't all stand up at the same time. Or you couldn't all sit down, rather. So we took numbers 1 and 2, and the 1 stood up when the 2 sat down. And for 6 days we crossed Germany, heading towards Berlin, and we're the north coast. And there were no facilities inside this. There was nothing on, there wasn't even straw on the floor of the boxcar. And there was no water, and there was no food. And occasionally they'd open the doors and let you out. But it was a pretty harrowing experience. In the Berlin rail yards, they parked us and locked us inside and said, oh, your friends, the British are coming. And they were on a night raid, and sure enough, they came, and they locked the doors of the boxcar, the German guards, and went into the air raid shelters, and we sat down and listened to the bombs from the British planes with the boxcar rocking on its springs. Pretty close hit. Anyway, then into a real concentration camp where they had about 70,000 prisoners of all nations. We weren't supposed to be there. We were supposed to be at an Air Force camp, but things were going badly near the end of the war. And as a result, Food became more and more scarce. On top of that, I was never alone, let's put it that way, at night. When I got in bed and tried to get warm, at least I was in a barrack. Some of the guys were out in tents that were freezing, and this was the coldest winter ever. And when I would get a little bit warmer, then I'd start feeling my friends crawling all over me. They were the body lice that never left you. One shower in 5 months. And then the fleas were biting, and there was no way to get clean. So I was never alone. I always had my buddies with me. Anyway, let me try to finish off. During World War II, I'm going to quote some statistics. And whenever you quote statistics, you go up against MEGO, M-E-G-O, my eyes glaze over. So that's why I wanted to tell you my story, personal story, and then I'll just feed you a couple statistics. The price of freedom. First of all, in World War II, 292,000 Americans were killed. In that, the Air Force lost 52,000, and we were a lot smaller percentage of the total armed forces. The odds of my surviving as an airman flying in a B-24 were 50%, which means that half of the guys who were with me would be dead, would not survive the war. Pretty nasty statistics. Our airplanes, we sent up 31 airplanes from my bomb group. 15 of them reached the target. 9 were shot down. And there were 10 men on each plane. So in the barracks or in the tents, there were 90 empty bunks that night on that one raid alone. So you get a little bit of a feeling what freedom's all about and what it costs. There was a cartoon in the newspaper a while back which showed, I downloaded it from the internet, it showed 3 pictures. The first picture was, what concerns Americans today? And the first one was, they showed a price of hot dogs. They had a package of Nathan's Best, I guess. Then the next thing I showed was a gasoline pump, price of gasoline. And then the third box was the real one, and that was a picture of a cemetery, a military cemetery with RIP on the stones. So today, if you can remember anything about Memorial Day, if I've made it any more interesting or more memorable, if you will, I appreciate that, and I thank you for your kind attention.